We are live. We're waiting for people to show up. I see the numbers coming in. If you're just joining us, welcome to our Microsoft 365 licensing event. We're hoping that after today's presentation, you are equipped to choose the best subscription plan for your organization. So we know that navigating all the different subscription plans for your business can be difficult. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of different needs that your users have, that your business has. So we're hoping to cover all of those questions today during the event. And we also want to make sure that we're addressing your questions throughout the presentation. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature that can be accessed on the right-hand side of your screen. So you can use this panel to submit your questions, and then I'll be receiving those questions and making sure that we address them either throughout the presentation, or we'll make sure we get to them at the end if we don't have a chance to get to it right away. So I think that should be it, Alex. I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. So I apologize in advance. We've got some construction noise going on just near my house here today. So I've heard some jackhammering and some sawzalls and the like. So if any of that comes through, I am sorry. But anyway, moving forward. So Microsoft 365 licensing. I'm Alex Fields. You probably know me if you've been coming to any of our events. Microsoft MVP, author, blogger, speaker, and what do I even do at Success Computer Consulting now? What is my job title there? Do you know it, Vanessa?
You are the Microsoft 365 ninja. You help organizations make the most of their Microsoft 365 subscriptions and leverage those tools to the best of their ability.
We're going with that. That sounds awesome. All right. So I just want to cover a couple different, somewhat it's going to be a history lesson today. So just getting started, let's start by talking about traditional Office 365 plans. Now there's been a little bit of shakeup here recently because it used to be nice and clean. There were these Office 365 plans, and then there were Microsoft 365 plans, which we'll get to. But they had to confuse things, of course, and so since the last time we gave this presentation, the licensing, branding, and all of that has been updated, at least for the business side. So now if you're working within the business track, everything is called Microsoft 365 versus the enterprise track, they still just call it Office 365. Yeah, not confusing at all, but basically in all of the plans that we're discussing here, we're only talking about productivity apps. So the business plan at their most basic level has a plan that features only the online applications such as Exchange Online, OneDrive, SharePoint Online, and so forth. And you have web apps of all the traditional desktop applications as well. So Outlook and PowerPoint and Excel, all those things function, but only on the web. Now on the enterprise side, we actually have a variety of plans that basically achieves the same outcome. We have frontline worker plans, both F1 and F3, as well as a plan called E1. So the difference between all these, basically, the frontline worker plans are going to be more limited in the feature set that they offer. F1 plans, users even have like read-only access to a lot of items. They're not really expected to be doing much editing of documents and so on. F3 users will also have edit capability, but they're still going to have certain limitations like a 2 GB limit for their mailbox, OneDrive, and so forth. Whereas the E1 plans contain full-fledged feature capabilities and large mailboxes, 50 gigabytes, and so forth. So you have a lot more just capacity with some of those subscriptions. Now on the Microsoft 365 business side, we have a plan called Basic, which includes full functionality web apps, very similar to the E1 plan, but it's only $5 per user per month. So a pretty affordable price for businesses or users who are just cloud-only users. Then you have this next tier, so to speak, where you still have all the web apps and everything, but you're also getting some desktop applications that you can install, client applications you can install, on your Windows and Mac devices. so that you can have the richest feature set and capabilities with your Microsoft applications. So they call that plan Microsoft 365 Business Standard now. This is formerly known as Office 365 Business Premium. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who started with that plan. So if you remember having a subscription once upon a time called Office 365 Business Premium, just know that it's been renamed under your nose to Microsoft 365 Business Standard. Now the equivalent to that on the enterprise side is Office 365 Enterprise E3. There is a big price difference here. I want to say it's $12.50 or something for the business versus $20 for the enterprise SKU. And part of the reason for that, in addition to just the fact that you have unlimited users and it's designed for larger sized organizations with a bigger budget, they also have a few more security and compliance features baked into that. So you can do like email encryption and some other things that are very often requested. And then there's another plan level that we have, but it only exists in the enterprise side. So as of today, there's really no equivalent to this on the business SKU, where you have a baked in phone system capability using previously Skype for Business, now Teams, and as well some advanced security, so advanced threat protection and so forth. Now, again, I said on the business side, we don't really have an equivalent to this. However, it is possible to add on any features that you would like. So there is actually a business voice plan that you can add if you wanted to do, voice over IP using Teams and so forth. So you can certainly do that. But again, there's not like a bundle that they have which accounts for that at this level. So hopefully that makes sense. I think we should pause for questions here. Is there anything in the Q&A? I'll give folks just a minute or so.
We do have a question. It's not exactly related to this content. Should I wait to ask it at the end, or would you want to address that right now?
Why not? Let's hear what they have to.
All right, sounds good. So Dan is wondering, to take advantage of Microsoft's CASB, it requires an ATP license. It appears that there are multiple types of ATP license. For example, some are tied to Exchange. What is the right add-on license to get all the bells and whistles out of CASB?
CASV, I'm not sure what the acronym is there. There's CASB, there's a CASB product.
CASB, yep, that's it. B is in boy.
Boy. Okay, gotcha. Oh yeah, so their CASB product is Microsoft Cloud App Security. And the only SKU you would need for that is Microsoft Cloud App Security. It's like $3.50 per user. And that is a subscription that is bundled into the E5 plan. Actually, it's one of the advanced security features bundled into E5. It's actually it's not the full Microsoft Cloud App Security. They call it Office 365 Cloud App Security because it only will give you some alerting and things on cloud applications and give you some policies to help mitigate certain risks with regards to cloud applications. But it won't do that for cloud applications outside of Microsoft in the E5 plan. So that would still be an add-on in that case. However, it is included in the Microsoft plans, which we'll get to. So that was a good question. We're almost there. Okay, so now we've got this other bundle that, it's been around for a long time now. So I think 2013 or 2014, they initially released this bundle. And the purpose of the Enterprise Mobility and Security Bundle was to deliver a cloud-centric management and security layer. So, traditionally we used to manage devices and identities and data using old school tools, old world tools from on-premises Active Directory rights management system, group policy and so forth. So now, with a lot of folks, especially in the enterprise, moving into scenarios where they're hardly ever in the office or they're bouncing around between locations all the time, and it's just really difficult to manage them in a traditional way, especially today, right, in the age of COVID. I mean, how many people are sitting, behind the firewall at the office connected to their local server where they got group policy access and stuff? Not very many, probably. So this is the answer to that, okay? And it's built up of three components. One is Azure Active Directory Premium, which is a cloud-based way of managing identities. The next is Microsoft Intune, which is also known as Microsoft Endpoint Manager. This is for your endpoint management. And this includes mobile devices, so not something that we had the capability with Active Directory in the past. You would have had to get a third-party MDM solution for that. And then also information protection. So if anyone's worked with rights management solutions on premises in the past, you can know how incredibly difficult that can be to deploy and manage. And in the cloud, it's very, very easy. It's just a couple of check boxes and you're off and running. So that's highly powerful as well. Now, and there's two flavors of this. We have the E3 plan, which includes Azure AD Premium. It includes the Endpoint Manager as well. It includes information protection, as we mentioned. As it also includes your Windows Server CAL licenses, so that if you do still have a hybrid situation, you can buy this in a way that qualifies you for covering that CAL requirement as you continue to upgrade your Windows servers. Then on the E5 side, it basically includes everything that E3 does. And in addition, it adds Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2, which gives you some additional capabilities such as privileged identity management. That allows you to elevate someone's rights, but only for a small period of time so that they can do some administrative task. And that has to go through an approval process and so forth. And as well, we have some other features like access reviews, where you can initiate access reviews and have those go to a manager for approval. And then you can also do certain things like risk-based conditional access, where you can create policies that limit someone's ability to access resources, or maybe it forces them to change a password if there's something risky about their sign-ins that's being detected. Okay, whereas in Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 1, you still get like multi-factor authentication and device-based conditional access, so you can implement a lot of policies that would make it very highly unlikely that your users would run into a situation where they're in a risky sign-in type of a scenario. So again, it's two different levels there, but the same product, just extending a few more capabilities. Then with regards to that last category, in addition to the information protection features, there's going to be some additional enhancements here and some additional integrations. So an example of that, I believe it was Dan who asked about this Microsoft Cloud App Security, which is a CASB product. That has the ability to monitor what's happening inside of your cloud applications and alert you to suspicious things that are going on. Okay, sharing of sensitive information, or just like massive amounts of download, like downloading massive amounts of data, or trying to relocate information or copy information to an unmanaged device and stuff like that. So as things are taking place there's an audit log being generated, and this is basically giving you some analysis and alerting based on that audit log that's coming out of there. So you're giving putting some AI against it. And you can do things like, for example, automatically label content. So with Azure Information Protection Plan 1, you have the ability to manually label content all day long. You can say, hey, this is a confidential document. I'm going to mark this document. It'll be encrypted. Whereas with the Azure Information Protection Plan 2 and Microsoft Cloud App Security, as a sensitive document is being downloaded to an unmanaged device, if it detects that, it can just apply a label automatically on the spot and say this is now marked with an encryption mechanism. So that's highly cool. As well, there's some other features in here. So I've mentioned Azure Advanced Threat Protection. Azure ATP is a service that you can leverage in the cloud, but what it's doing is collecting logs from your on-premises environment. So again, if you still have on-premises Active Directory, and there are events, there's also events happening on your on-premises network, and those events can be shipped up to the cloud for some analysis and alerting on suspicious looking things. So it has a lot more of what you would consider advanced security. A lot of the things in that plan, you would need. You can't just like set them and forget them. This kind of thing requires and kind of assumes that you have information security professionals, working with your team, right? And so for an enterprise organization, this might make sense if they have dedicated InfoSec resources, and people who are staffed on a SOC, to be able to babysit these tools, to tune them over time, to adjust them and refine them for what the organization's actual, day-to-day behaviors and activities are. So, they don't run themselves. They're highly advanced tools, but again, the chances in the small and mid-sized market of needing these are fairly low, unless you're working with, an information security provider. All right, so I'm going to pause here one more time to see if there are any questions so far on either Office 365 or the Enterprise Mobility and Security bundles.
Yeah, we have quite a few, so buckle up. This is great. Okay. So the first question we received is actually two questions. Windows 10 Pro versus Enterprise with Business versus Enterprise. And then the second question is phones can't be used with Business. Yeah, so the phones can be used with Business, but you need to get the right plan. So you can't use the Enterprise voice plan. There's a specific one that's made for Business. So that's that one. So as long as you get the correct phone plan, then you'll be fine. Now, with regard to Windows, that's actually yet another thing. So there's like Windows isn't included in anything we've covered here so far, but that's what's coming in the next slide, which is the Microsoft 365 bundle of bundles. Basically just bundles all three of these things, right? It bundles Office 365, Enterprise Mobility and Security, as well as Windows licensing. And so when we get to that, I'll go over a little bit of what's included in each Windows license and the difference between them. Mostly it's going to revolve around security. So that's a good question as well. What else do we have? All right, and then this, I believe you've somewhat already answered this. So with Business, you would have Teams, but not the ability to do calls unless you added that feature. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, you'd have to add the Business voice plan in order to do like where you're dialing like a phone number from your Teams client and getting access to a PSTN. Yeah. Correct. All right. Then the next one here, Enterprise Mobility and Security isn't available with Business. So the Enterprise Mobility and Security, as we get to the Microsoft 365 bundle, they do bundle the Enterprise Mobility and Security along with that, and I'll show how that's broken down in the next slide. Maybe we should move to that one because I think that might help fix it up. Yeah. And then the last question is a question definitely for everyone. Yes, a link to this presentation will be sent in a post-event email. So if you're a little late, no worries. We're also recording this event, so if you just wanted to watch the first 10 minutes that you missed, you will be able to do that. Awesome. And that's it. Cool. And so the Microsoft 365 bundle of bundles, this is the one that ties everything together. Okay. And so, yes, it's going to include your Office 365 suite. It's going to have Enterprise Mobility and Security as well. It's going to have a Windows 10 subscription. And all of these things are put into one bundle, which makes it highly attractive because it's less money than trying to buy all these things separately, right? Now, for example, the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, we'll just focus on that one. And that's where we'll honestly spend most of our time because, for our market, the businesses that we serve, this meets, 95, maybe even 98% of all needs. Okay, so it's very rare that you have to go up. And usually if you're going up, you're really just adding, what you need for the individual people you need it for. It's unlikely you'd have to, upgrade every single person beyond this. So this is a highly valuable SKU. It's only $20 per user per month. And that is the same price as only having the Office 365 Enterprise E3. And it has a lot of the same features and then some. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing is that when you consider it comparative to the enterprise plans, the next plan up, Microsoft Enterprise E3, that plan is $32 per user per month. And the functionality is, it's difficult to see the difference. It's very difficult to see the difference in functionality. So it's literally $12 per user per month less if you're able to do the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Of course, you are held to that 300 user limit, so organizations larger than that, aren't eligible. But for the small and mid-sized market, this is a killer deal. Now, how they built this plan up
is they started with Microsoft 365 Business Standard, which was previously called Office 365 Business Premium. And then they layered in some enterprise extras to make it almost equivalent to Enterprise E3. So for example, they added unlimited mailbox archiving, as well as email encryption and some other features, DLP, that help to make it much more similar to the Enterprise E3 plan. Then they have Enterprise Mobility and Security. Now I say most of EMS E3 there. The major thing that it's missing is it just doesn't come with that Windows Server Cal benefit that I mentioned, whereas the full Enterprise Mobility and Security E3 plan would. So that's one thing it's missing. However, note that many small business customers now are, if they haven't already made the leap, they're looking to make the leap soon into a cloud-only environment. And the reason is because most of their applications are now going to SaaS-based equivalents, where they can access most of what they're doing with their applications through like a web browser, right? And of course that includes your traditional, file sharing and document storage and all of that, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and so forth. But as well, there's other CRMs and things like Salesforce. Those are all online and stuff, right? And so as the more people can move into an environment like that, the less need they have for traditional server infrastructure. And small businesses are going to have a much easier time of making that transition quicker than enterprise organizations who are probably going to be, in a hybrid configuration for a longer term. So some of the value of that, Windows Server Cal, definitely more, appropriate for the enterprise organization. Now, with regard to this last piece, this Windows 10, a lot of people are kind of confused on this point because they think like, well, don't I already have Windows 10? Like, I just bought a computer and it has Windows 10 Pro, so isn't that good enough, or am I covered? And the answer is like, yes, you have Windows 10, but when you have a subscription, it's unlocking certain features that you don't otherwise have access to. And we'll take a look at a couple of those when we get to the endpoint management. But as an example, in the business and in the enterprise E3, which are very close and similar in what you can unlock, you'll have the ability to leverage intelligence in the Microsoft 365 cloud that will then help you to do things like limit which applications are allowed to run or the sites that users are allowed to connect to, because it's leveraging, a reputation-based rating system. And so that's highly valuable for security, right? You can prevent untrusted code from executing, and you can prevent users from visiting sites that aren't, are known to be malicious and spreading malware and are disreputable. So those are some examples of things that are being delivered through the subscription, and it's leveraging, cloud intelligence. So that's what you're kind of paying for there, right? Is that cloud subscription. And then in the Microsoft, 365 enterprise side with their Windows subscriptions, you open up a few more capabilities. So like I said, it's really hard to tell the difference between business and E3, but in Enterprise E5, they have a tool called Microsoft Defender ATP. And Microsoft Defender ATP is also known as, it belongs to a category of applications known as endpoint detection and response software, okay? So here at Success, like we actually have a different EDR that we use. So it used to not be possible to get that standalone. So you could only get it by buying this E5 plan, which is like $57 per user per month. That's like a non-starter for most small and mid-sized organizations. So we have a different EDR that we package with our management tools and stuff, but there is an EDR built into the Microsoft stack. It used to only be available in E5. It is available now as a standalone. So that's something that we can add even to the business plan. And what that tool does is it basically sends data from the endpoint, all the logs and stuff from the endpoint. It sends it up to the cloud and it analyzes it for weird stuff that's happening, process injections or just strange behavior that looks like, that could be a bad actor, not a real user, right? And so that'll give you alerts, based on that. Like I said, there's a lot of products in the marketplace that meet those requirements. Those are called EDR solutions. And Microsoft just has one flavor of that. And so that's kind of the breakdown in the Windows side, if that makes sense. I think I'll pause one more time for questions.
We don't have any questions yet. But I mean, we'll make sure to address them as they come in. So
well, maybe I just did a really good job.
Yeah, you're very thorough.
All right, cool. We'll keep going. So I also mentioned that there's these frontline worker plans, right? And they actually made a frontline worker SKU that is the full Microsoft 365, stack. So you get, the Office 365 productivity apps. Like I mentioned, there's the F1, which is kind of seen as a mobile worker only. Oftentimes they'll only be reading information and they might be doing some email, but very, very light users of the application suite. So you can kind of think of those as email only users, mobile only users, or very light users of the other apps. Then with regard to enterprise mobility and security, they're giving us the full enterprise mobility and security E3 plan with both of these. So you do have the ability to manage their mobile devices if that's what they're using. And as well, the enterprise F3 SKU includes the ability to manage desktop devices. So sometimes, even if they don't do a lot of work behind a desktop, maybe it's a shared machine or something, a frontline worker could be sitting down at a desktop from time to time. And so they wanted to account for that. And then, of course, with regards to Windows 10, for the mobile worker, there is no Windows 10 subscriptions included. And then for the enterprise F3 worker, there is an E3 subscription to Windows 10, which I believe has like a couple small limitations around it. Long-term servicing channel, so enterprise organizations have the ability to space out their updates a little more if they want to, and not they don't have to upgrade at the same cadence that everyone else does if they don't want to. That doesn't apply to frontline workers. And I can't remember what the other ones are, but they're not that important. So that's kind of a breakdown of the frontline plans. I don't have the pricing handy for this, so I apologize for that. I want to say, I think one of them is like $10, and I can't remember what the other one is. So, but I don't know which is which. So if it's less than that or more than that on the other side. So, but they're very inexpensive, but there are certain limitations, right? So that's something to be aware of.
We did have one question. Does business equal Windows Pro?
Yes, it's basically just Windows 10 Pro, and then as you join a Windows 10 Pro to Azure Active Directory, if that user is licensed with Microsoft 365 Business Premium, their Windows Edition will change to Business, and that's just a fancy way of indicating that you're getting some of that cloud enhanced protections. Yeah.
All right, that's it for now.
Cool. All right, with regard to mixing and matching plans, this is also possible to do. So for example, if your organization has a mix of frontline workers, standard end users, and then maybe even some sensitive or higher end users who need additional protection, maybe some executives or something who are getting phished all the time or whatever, you can certainly mix and match plans. And you could even use, enterprise plans in the business sphere if you needed to. And so, for example, there are no frontline plans in the business track. They're actually enterprise plans. I probably should have left that as a blue tile. Maybe I'll edit that before we send it out. But yeah, you can mix and match even within, you don't have to only stick to business or only stick to enterprise. Now, if you do have frontline workers, you could just leverage the enterprise plans, F1 or F3, just like you would in the enterprise. Now, if you're a small size business and you have a standard end user, the chances are that user is going to find everything they need with Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Very, very high chance that that's all they need. And of course, in the enterprise side, if you don't qualify for business plans, you would probably be looking at that E3 SKU for like a standard, run-of-the-mill information worker. Now, for the sensitive end users who might need a little bit additional advanced security and compliance, or maybe they need or another tier here could be just like communications enabled users for, the phone system or something, right? For that in the enterprise space, you might be looking at E5. In the business premium space, you would simply leverage add-ons. You could do that business voice subscription for the voice users. You could add some additional security with Microsoft Cloud App Security as an add-on if you wanted to that, and so on. So it's pretty easy to build these, build, mix and match however you like. And I put a special note here on the E3 as well as the frontline worker plans. Those plans do not include Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. Now, one of the killer features in Microsoft 365 Business Premium is that it does include advanced threat protection. And this is, basically just intelligence that helps to better protect your email. And it does that in a number of ways. So it will, prevent malicious attachments from coming, even if they pass like an antivirus scanner. It will blow them up in a sandbox and see if it's doing anything that looks malicious, and then it will block those based on that result. As well, links will be quarantined and wrapped into a Microsoft URL so that when you click on them, at the time of click, it's actually launching that through a Microsoft website first to test whether it's a good site or not before sending you on to the final destination. And that's important because a website that's good today might go dark tomorrow. And so that can work even if your device isn't being managed. That still works because you're clicking on your email links like right in your email client, and that's where the link wrapping is happening. And then as well, there's some additional intelligence that's looking at patterns of email sending and file sharing in your organization. And when it sees things out of the ordinary there, it can raise some red flags. And so I'll just share a quick story around this. I just want to do this really quick because I thought it was so fascinating. This was actually kind of interesting because it ended up being a false positive where there's a software vendor who was working with one of our customers, and the software vendor was making an unusual request to the customer. They had sent them an email to the effect of like, hey, I don't have rights to do this. Can you go ahead and run this on your server for me? Or have someone run this on your server for me? And it was a totally legit request, right? Because obviously they're working on getting some software working like line of business software, and it was totally normal. They just needed to get this update done or whatever. And they didn't have access to do that. But it's literally like the intelligence in this anti-phishing thing is reading that as like a strange request that this person doesn't usually receive. And so it quarantined that message, and they didn't get it. And so and this vendor called them and like, hey, how come I haven't heard from you in 3 days about this, And it was because they didn't notice it got quarantined. But anyway, just sort of interesting. It can also, I should say like that was kind of a bad example because it caused a false positive, but it also catches a good number of legitimate phishing attempts as well. So anyways, that is included in the Business Premium plan, which is really, really awesome. And it's not even in the Enterprise E3, which is, again, $12 more. So I feel pretty good about the value in that Business Premium SKU. It is included in E5, of course, and it's always available as an add-on. I think it's a couple of bucks. All right, any questions on mixing, matching, add-ons, anything like that? Any new questions came in since our last pause?
No new questions yet, but if anyone has any lingering questions out there, feel free to submit them and we'll make sure they get answered.
Awesome. All right, I think we'll move forward then. So the next thing I wanted to do was, just to go over a few scenarios that you can enable using Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And these would also be possible with E3. So there's some additional stuff with E5 and so forth. But as far as like your standard information worker type of scenario, these are some key requests, key things that come up often from our customers, and so I just wanted to go over these today. So they will be protecting corporate data on mobile devices, cloud-based endpoint security, access control for unmanaged devices, and data classification. And then after this, we'll also touch on a couple of enterprise-specific scenarios, so that we can talk about like what's missing in the business SKU that you might find in enterprise but you don't have in business. So we'll touch on that as well. So the first thing is protecting corporate data on mobile devices. This is actually really important for meeting a lot of compliance requirements. If you're following like some formal cybersecurity framework like the CIS critical security controls, I believe control number 13 data protection will call out being able to encrypt data on mobile devices and also being able to wipe that data if the device is lost or stolen. And so the traditional way of doing that would have been device-based management policies where you have to enroll all your devices and start playing Big Brother over those devices. And a lot of end users can be a little bit put off by that their company has so much access and control over their device, which is a very personal device, right? Well, with Microsoft 365, we can actually enable application-based management. And this will help you to address some of the same concerns, but in a different way. Okay, so as an example, you can create policies for either Apple or Android, right? You can encrypt files and force them to remain within OneDrive and SharePoint, right? So if you have an email attachment or something, it wouldn't let you save that to the device. Like you can't save it down to the device. You couldn't save it to a different app like Dropbox. You'd have to save it in that Microsoft, corporate managed space. And as well, you can enforce access controls such as a PIN, and you can also prevent the app from launching if it's jailbroken, okay? So this is similar to like on the device level requiring a PIN. Well, you can just require a PIN for the application, which could also be replaced by like a fingerprint or facial recognition, whatever your device supports. And then of course, we can go even a step further where we can actually wrap a wall around your managed applications and not allow it to share data or even copy and paste data to other applications. So that's not every organization needs quite that level. It's called Endpoint Data Loss Prevention, Endpoint DLP, but it is possible. It's possible to do with the Microsoft subscription. And so like in a corporate device managed scenario, right, one of the ways that people limit risk there to prevent data leakage, if that's important to them, is they have to prevent people from being able to access their app store. So they can't install apps that aren't approved by the corporate entity, right? So they can only work within the approved apps. Well, this just says, I don't really care what other apps you have on your device because you can't really share from the managed apps to the unmanaged apps anyway. I have total control over the managed apps. They're encrypted. I can wipe them anytime I want, and so on. So it's basically addressing all the same mobility concerns, but just by focusing on the control that we have over the application data rather than around the device itself. And so from an end user point of view, the consequence of this is that if they try to use an application such as like the native iOS mail app or the native Android mail app, they would be blocked. They would get this dreaded conditional access prompt that says you can't get there from here. And so it'll give them a message that says like, look, you have to use an approved app. You can't just use any old app. And the reason is because I can control managed apps. I can't control unmanaged ones, right? If I'm not managing the device. So there is a consequence to it, but I think it's a small price to pay for awesome security. And as well, those applications are written specifically for, working in the Microsoft cloud. So they have some of the richest feature functionality. For example, in the Outlook app, you can use shared mailboxes. You can use shared calendars. You can natively read emails that are encrypted. You don't have to open them in some other viewer or be taken to a web page and sign in or something like that. So everything actually works a lot better, and making an adjustment to those new apps, once you do, it's actually really difficult to go back. So I have accounts on my normal, so to speak, iOS email app, and I actually hate that experience now compared to Outlook. All right, I'll try to move a little bit faster through some of these others because I know we're running. Looks like how much time we got left, Vanessa?
You got 20 minutes.
Okay.
21.
I do want to leave a little bit of time at the end, and if I can get everyone else out, a little bit early, that'd be even better. So with regard to endpoint security, right, we don't have to manage devices, from an old on-premises server anymore, which is fairly limited actually, because you have to be in contact with the network in order to get updates to policy, and it's just not that awesome. So, in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or what's known as Intune, we actually have a lot of really cool features. Now, in the on-premises world, if I'm deploying my own group policies, like security can be somewhat of a guessing game. And so it can be a little bit more difficult to establish really well vetted, well-defined security baselines. In Microsoft Endpoint Manager, they give you security baselines that you can apply, or at least review as a basis for your own custom policies. And I think that's really important. Another thing that's kind of interesting about this is that they update it all the time. So each year they release updates to their baselines because things change, right? Software changes, new features come out, old features are retired. The threat landscape changes, so the things that are threatening us today might look different than the stuff that's threatening us tomorrow. And so having, the power of, Microsoft security engineers and all their knowledge and everything being able to draw on that very easily through the portal is valuable in and of itself. And then, of course, you can use Endpoint Manager to control settings like your antivirus, disk encryption with BitLocker, Windows Defender Firewall, all of the things that are baked into the Windows OS. You have levers to pull on that stuff. Now, as I mentioned too, there's also some advanced security settings that are only available in the cloud, such as this attack surface reduction area. So we'll talk about that as just as a couple of examples. The first is attack surface reduction rules. Now, these are really powerful because you can quickly turn off a lot of things that just shouldn't be happening typically on a device. So an example of this might be if Office is attempting to launch a child process, whether that's due to a macro or some other thing that they're taking advantage of code vulnerabilities in Excel or anything like that, you can just turn that off. You can just prevent that kind of thing from happening. So these are attack vectors that are very often used by malware to deliver and execute malicious code. So you can prevent some of that stuff from happening just by turning on these attack surface reduction rules. You can't do that with a normal Windows 10 Pro machine. You would have to have access to the subscription to be able to pull these levers. Now, we also have web protection. And as I mentioned, web protection is leveraging the intelligent security graph at Microsoft. And that keeps a database on known malicious sites that are known to be spreading malware or phishing links or whatever. And so client machines can actually be prevented from connecting to those addresses. And that's pretty powerful. It actually happens at the network layer, not at, not through like the Edge browser or anything. So even a third-party browser would be protected here. And there's some other things in here that, I won't go into. Some of those aren't available in the business subscription. Some are only available as you move into the enterprise space. But these ones that I touched upon are in fact available through the business subscription. Application control is a feature that not all organizations are going to be able to use, but for organizations who only use like really well-known apps like Microsoft and Adobe and stuff, this could be highly valuable. So what this is it leverages, again, the intelligent security graph. There's a database there of really well-known and trustworthy and reputable apps. And so if you enable application control with what they call Smart Locker, Smart Locker is it's like the easy button for another security feature that they have called App Locker. Now, if you're doing App Locker in the enterprise, it's a very hard thing to set up and maintain. You basically have to create a whitelist of every single process and script and everything that's allowed to run in your environment. And then if it's not on your whitelist, it doesn't run. Okay, and that can be very tedious to maintain something like that. Well, application control is like the easy button for App Locker or application whitelisting, because instead of you having to build a list, it's just using a list that's in the cloud of reputable components. That includes all the Windows components as well as anything from the Microsoft Store, and then anything that's just deemed to be a highly reputable app. But anything else cannot run. So I've been running this myself for a little while, and I haven't had any problems yet. I mean, I use a few other apps, like I do have some Adobe, creative products and stuff, and obviously those are, very well trusted and stuff. And I'm in PowerPoint and Word and Excel very frequently. And if that's the kind of stuff you work with, and you don't have like really weird apps that probably not very many people have, then this might be a really powerful feature. Of course, if you do have some line of business apps that aren't that common, they might not be known by the intelligent security graph, and so it might not work out for you. But if you have access to it, it is pretty cool.
All right, Alex, we do have a couple questions before we move on.
Sure.
Does Microsoft 365 Business Premium include Power BI Pro?
No, the only subscription to include Power BI Pro is E5. So you'd have to go all the way to E5 to get it included. Otherwise, it's available as an add-on. So most people, even in the enterprise, where their largest number of seats they sell today is Enterprise E3. That's the largest number of seats, and even there they would be adding it on. But on the business side, no, they don't have a Pro subscription bundled in either.
Got it. And then in regards to all the security features you were just talking about, is it possible to take screenshots of documents or screen record on an Apple phone?
Okay, yeah. On Apple, I'm not sure what the result on an Apple would be. I know that like in the Windows world, if you turn on some of that application protection, yeah, when you try to take a screenshot, it'll actually black out areas that are, protected. I haven't actually tested that on an Apple device, and I'm not familiar enough to know. So it's a good question, though. It might be worth us following up with that.
Yeah, we'll investigate.
Yep.
And that's it.
Cool. All right, so access control for unmanaged devices. So with access control, this is actually conditional access under the hood. I'm just showing a screen here from the SharePoint Admin Center. Basically, you have the ability to turn off access from an unmanaged device to certain resources, or you can limit that access. So by default, it's just open access. There's no conditional access policies applied. So regardless of what device you're coming from, this could be any one of several, however many billion of devices we have in the world now. Any device could potentially connect to your resources by default. That's just how it is if you're connected to a public network. But as soon as you turn on one of these access controls, then you can start to limit that. So for example, with this allow limited web only access, it means that you wouldn't be able to download any files from the web. Like you could still visit places like your Outlook mailbox on the web and interact with emails and reply to emails and stuff, but you couldn't actually download any data from that mailbox. As well, if you were in OneDrive, you couldn't download any files. You can only work with the files in OneDrive, like Word on the web or Excel on the web, things like that. As well, you wouldn't be able to launch the OneDrive application and click sync and start syncing data down. So those kinds of functions would be blocked if it's not a managed device. Now, of course, that means that, in order to implement this, you have to have your devices enrolled, because the cloud has to be able to distinguish between devices that are managed and ones that are not managed, devices that are corporate versus ones that, are not. And so once you enroll your devices, then you can start to apply these policies that make, distinguishing decisions based on whether that's a managed device or not. Now, this last one is you could just straight up block access. And for some things that may be appropriate, where it's like, I don't even need people to have read-only or web-only access. I just don't want them to have access at all. Now, where I'm showing you this here is actually like global settings. So if you turn this on, it would affect everything like throughout 365. So be careful about that. You can also do it on a more like specific, site-by-site basis if you needed to, okay? So it's also possible to do that. As of today, you have to do that in PowerShell. Coming soon, we'll be able to use sensitivity labels in that way, and we're going to touch on sensitivity labels in our data classification section coming up here. So now, from an end user perspective, again, you're going to get this prompt similar to what you saw before. It'll be this conditional access prompt. You can't get there from here, and it'll tell you why. Hey, you're not using a device or client application that meets our management policy, right? So the users who meet the device compliance requirement, they're using the managed devices and stuff, they wouldn't get this message, right? They would be able to go to the resource, no problem. But for people who aren't in that position, they can't. And that means that instead of having several billion devices that are possible to connect to your resources, it's limited to the relatively tiny number of devices that you enroll and manage in your environment. And I just wanted to show what the limited access scenario looks like. You'll basically you'll have a banner if you browse, using the web apps, you browse to like OneDrive or Outlook, you'll get this little banner that says, hey, your organization doesn't allow you to download, print, or sync. Okay, that's all. So data classification. This is this scenario is becoming more and more important. And I think it's because people have started realizing how slippery data is. I had a recent article on this, but even if you do a really good job of protecting your data locations and you apply good security controls, the fact is data flies around all the time. Like you're emailing copies of it around, or people can download copies and move them to a USB stick and move them around. I mean, it's really easy to exfiltrate data. You have to put up a lot of controls to try to prevent or control that. So one way of dealing with this is to just apply classification to the data itself. And data classification has a lot of other benefits too. So just being able to identify sensitive data is a valuable exercise for a lot of compliance reasons and otherwise. But from the Security and Compliance Center, you can create these sensitivity labels, and they have a specific order. So however you come up with your classification structure, whatever you decide to call them, you know, the lowest is the least sensitive, and the highest number here, or the one further down the list, that's the most sensitive. And so the order matters because as users are starting to work with these labels, if they attempt to downgrade, they get triggered to you know, enter a justification if you enable that feature. So they can be required to justify, why are you downgrading this from confidential to general, you know, or something like that. So from an end user perspective, it's pretty simple. You're just going to get this sensitivity button in all the various Office apps. You're going to start seeing that show up everywhere. So it's already in all the web apps, and the mobile apps are getting it now too. Actually, I think it might actually be rolled out completely now. But once you turn these on, you do have to turn them on, so they're not on by default. But once you turn them on, then you can mark these documents depending on their you know, their sensitivity rating. And this is actually pretty cool. You can create custom labels. I'm just showing the default ones here. That comes with some default labels you can use. This is the classification structure that Microsoft uses internally. And but you can also create custom ones. So you can have like a sub-label under confidential that is like restricted to, say, like the management team or something. Or you could create a label that is for marketing, where marketing can create materials. They have edit rights to those documents, but everyone else has read-only. And you can have things that are internal only. So that even if a document accidentally got sent to someone or leaked outside the organization or left on a USB stick and it, you know, got lost on a bus or something, I don't know, and someone else picked it up, they couldn't actually open the document. And because the document, you know, contains encryption, it's marked confidential. If they open it up, they're going to be prompted for their Azure Active Directory credentials. They have to be able to sign in, you know, to your environment in order to gain access to that data. And you can also enforce things like document marking. So like in this example in the background here, I've got this, you know, confidential watermark. I mean, you can do it as a footer or something a little less obnoxious if you want. I just wanted to show something obvious. So there's a lot of little things you can do with sensitivity labels. And coming soon, you can also apply these to groups and teams and things, and that'll change what you're able to do with, say, a team. You might be able to apply confidential, for example, to a team, and that means now you can't invite external people in. It can only be internal people, right? So lots of cool capabilities there, and I think as more people catch on to how powerful this is, they're going to absolutely be in love with it. All right, so that was basically all of the business scenarios that I wanted to cover. There's just a couple things that I thought we'd touch on in business versus enterprise. Now, I've listed a whole bunch of features here, like Teams live events, advanced data features, Microsoft threat protection, and advanced compliance. And we've kind of touched on some of this, like the advanced data features. That would be like Power BI Pro, right? That's available again in E5. Microsoft threat protection, like I think we've kind of touched on Microsoft Cloud App Security as an example of that, and Microsoft Defender ATP, the EDR product, right? Those are additional. Those require additional security analysts and resources and engineers to like run those tools, and they're typically targeted toward enterprise organizations. And then there's some advanced compliance features that you can get access to. So like the example of being able to automatically label documents rather than just manually label them in the apps. So those are you know, E5 things basically. Now Teams live events is even available in E3, but not in business. And so we did want to touch on that because it's one of the differences that we can actually point to between E3 and the business premium subscription that people actually notice. And so with that, you know, if Vanessa, if you'd like to just give a little overview of Teams live events.
Yeah, so as an attendee of this event, you are in a Microsoft Teams live event. So you're on the attendee side. And so live events are an extension of team meetings, and they allow you to broadcast video and meeting content to large online audiences. So these are really meant for one-to-many communications where the host of the event is leading the interactions, much like we are now. And the audience participation is primarily just to view that content shared by the host. The attendees then can watch the live or recorded event in Yammer, Teams, or Stream. And then just like you are today, you can interact with that Q&A panel. So Alex, if you want to switch to the next slide. This is what the back end of a live event looks like. So this is a little different than what your standard Microsoft Teams meeting looks like. There's two ways in which you can produce a live event. One is just using the Teams client, and that's the lightest weight option. It's the easiest option, and that's what we're doing right now. We don't have any fancy video equipment set up. We're just using the Teams application to produce this event. However, you can also produce the live event using external hardware or a software encoder via Microsoft Stream. And this option, of course, is just going to require some knowledge and experience with professional camera and sound setup. So before we wrap up here, I just want to talk about some key differences between a Microsoft Teams meeting and a live event. So in a Teams meeting, audience participation, or I'm sorry, in a Teams live event, audience participation is limited to a Q&A panel. And this is really helpful for large audiences in which you would like to control microphone interruptions, distractions with video in the background, all of that. The producer is in charge of what is displayed on the screen. Another key difference is that Teams live events allows for 20,000 attendees. So if you're ever in the need to produce an event for 20,000 attendees, Teams live events has you covered. Whereas Teams meetings allow up to 250 attendees. And then lastly, large live streaming events typically have several people working behind the scenes to make them successful. So Microsoft Teams live events supports this with different event group roles, which you just don't get in Teams meetings. So some group roles would be an event organizer. This is the person who schedules the live event and ensures the event is set up right with permissions. And then we have a producer who is making sure attendees have that great viewing experience by controlling the live event screen. So they're the ones that are, I can show you an example of controlling the live event screen is popping up a video. So here I am, and I just was able to control that because I'm the producer of this live event. And then you have a presenter, and that person just presents your audio, video, the presentation, and that's Alex in this scenario. And then, of course, the attendees are you guys. So then lastly, let's talk about who can create live events. And as Alex mentioned, this is missing from your Microsoft 365 business plan. So you need an Office 365 E1, E3, or E5 license. You need permission to create live events in the Teams Admin Center. And also, if you want to produce a live event using an external broadcasting app, you would need the permission to do that in Microsoft Stream. You're going to need full team membership in the organization in which you're presenting from. And then private meeting scheduling, screen sharing, and IP video sharing needs to be turned on in the team meeting policy.
Cool. Yeah, and I think an important thing to note here is that it's really just the people producing and putting on the event, hosting the event that really need those licenses. And so, for example, none of the attendees require licenses or anything like that.
Correct.
And if you do want to put on live events and you've got a marketing team or somebody who's savvy with that, and they're the ones kind of at the helm of this, they might be the only people, or a small set of people might be the only folks who need to go up to that enterprise SKU. So again, you don't necessarily have to upgrade every single person in your organization and spend $12 per person per month more, just for that one feature. You might only have to, focus on a couple of users. Cool. So I think before we leave it, we want to leave with a couple additional resources. So you get all these slide decks and stuff, but there's this really cool cat from Australia, Aaron Dinage, and he's another Microsoft MVP. He has some excellent licensing graphics out on GitHub, and so there'll be a link to that included. And I'll just show you a little teaser here what that's like. So this is the Microsoft 365 Business Premium SKU, and what he does is, he breaks down what's in that SKU into little tiny tiles, and then groups those tiles according to which product they belong to, right? So Office 365, Enterprise Mobility and Security, and Windows 10, and all the individual, you can see all the individually what's all included in those things. So it's pretty cool, and he also keeps them up to date. So this one was last updated May 2020, not that long ago. And as things do change in the cloud, it's important to stay on top of this stuff. So this is like an example of the Enterprise E3. He did a similar thing, so you can kind of see there. Very interesting way of representing it. I like it a lot, and I thought that a lot of us might benefit from having access to something like this. So, any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions.
Cool.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, this event recording will be accessible, and the post-event email will also be sending this presentation and the resources that were mentioned in the event today. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days. That should be hitting your inbox shortly.
Awesome.
All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. It's like Friday Eve. We're almost there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. All right, bye.